Now, I don't know if I buy that either. I mean, it seems so simplistic, and I am willing to entertain other ideas, but I don't know. But the interesting point, again, is that she was able to publish both. In other words, that she wasn't identified in one camp, and that the Venetians were willing to engage what she had to say on these topics, and presumably willing to listen to her opinion in the political military venue.
Yes. Just as English has changed in the last 3-4 centuries, did you find going back to do the translation in Italian that Italian had changed quite a bit over the centuries, or is the language still very much the same?
One of the advantages of Italian is that essentially it hasn't changed significantly since the 13th century, such that if you pick up Dante, which is contemporary to Chaucer, with some difficulty, I mean, I'm not suggesting that you can just, you know, after 2 semesters of Italian, pick up Dante and read it, but the structure is the same. The vocabulary is largely the same. There are some quirks to this text. Some come from the fact that she is a Venetian, so some of the terms are inflected by the Venetian language. I don't want to call it a dialect because it just sounds so dismissive. Part of it, and in fact a big part of it, comes from the fact that the graphic form of Italian wasn't yet fixed. And so the people setting it in print were a little loose with their spelling. But it's always clear, and some of the irregularities keep showing up so that you know where you stand. This is one of my current sources of frustration with the Italians, with the Italian press that will put out the critical edition, because in Italy we're still very much accustomed to normalizing spellings. And I have a problem with it. One is an intellectual problem in that, as my graduate students know, when you pick up something from the 15th, 16th, 17th century and the spelling throws you, or the way characters are shown on a page, you immediately are aware that you're reading something from a different culture. And if you normalize it, that source of otherness, to use a jargonesque kind of term, that disappears. The other very practical problem is that if you normalize too much, some of the words that should be in a certain way in Italian are in rhyme, and you cannot change it, otherwise you're going to mess up the rhyme. And so, in essence, in order to standardize it, I should be introducing mistakes, which, I'm sorry, I'm drawing the line, I'm not doing. I mean, a rhyme is a rhyme. You know, the fact that foco and loco rhyme means that luogo and fuoco don't. And anybody worth his or her salt who's literally taken 3 semesters of Italian is going to be able to figure it out.
Yes, Susan. I was just curious in your description of Emilia, especially. She reminded me of Diane.
Yes.
And I was just wondering whether there was a direct inspiration from the Metamorphoses, and perhaps with these 3 women who go into battle, these magnificent warriors, etc., by having her survive, if there isn't some another way of reinscribing this kind of glory and elevating the status of the purity of women, their prowess, etc.
Absolutely. I mean, for starters, I should mention that Marinella was unusually well educated. We don't know how she acquired this education. We know that her father was a very important physician. He was actually a published author on ailments and medication for these ailments for women. So there's an interest in the physicality of women. One of her brothers, Curzio, was also a physician. And since we don't know much about the latter part of Giovanni Marinelli's life, her father's life, we just know that he died in 76, so she would have been 5 years old. So maybe her brother was really more responsible for her education than her father. But it's clear that she knew her classical references back and forth. Diana is very much inscribed in Emilia as well as in Claudia. Both of them are first and foremost archers, and all three of them are always repeatedly called virgins and maidens. So that is also one of the founding elements of Diana, Artemis. The fact that she goes back to killing the wild animals, Emilia, at the end of, after the battle, it also, it's a way to inscribe her as a divinity. It's also, some people have read it as a retreat back to domesticity, as in you can go out and change the world, or attempt to, even if you don't change the course of history, but then you sort of have to, you know, go back and do your thing. Although, again, the thing that she's doing is run around and kill animals. I mean, not exactly a female profession, certainly not in the 16th or 17th century. She is blonde, but interestingly, she's usually not associated with nighttime. She's, you know, the daylight is a big thing for Emilia. So that's the non-Diana aspect of it. All these characters are pieced together. They're very eclectic in their background, which makes it more difficult for me when you're trying to write a footnote. But it's also a sense of how much stake Marinella put in this. I mean, it's really a tour de force. Every element is overdetermined, so that you go, oh, I hadn't noticed this. Oh, and trust me, I've read this many times, and I'm still discovering things. So.